in my near my childhood, my parents knew that the daughters should be either a doctor or an engineer. So with that sort of thing in mind, my first endeavor was to become a doctor, and I picked up biotechnology honors from Amity in Noida. That was my first time when I left my home and came to a fairly large city. And it was very challenging because I didn't know anything about laptops, computers, and I did not even know. I had not really left my home till that time for a very long duration. So for me, it was almost like I didn't know what to do. It was my graduation, and everybody was talking big things here. People used to, even the kids used to have cars in my college. So I was almost like a complete outlier. I really did not know what to do, and but I still found my feet, and I somehow started my grad with some difficulties, but eventually I came to terms with the big city, and eventually I got my hold in the NCR. And then after my grad, which happened in 2004, is when it came upon me that all this, all this, your parents imposed career decisions aren't that great, because you have to find what interests you. And I then decided to come to general management. But I had a personal problem. I had something which came my way in my family. I lost my dad unexpectedly, which was never unexpected. And back in 2005, it was a very difficult time for us. So I had to literally go to my college back again, and I had to tell them that, listen, I'm in a full-time PGDM course, but I would like to work, and because I don't have anybody else to support my family, and they allowed me. So in 2005 I started my full time employment with a very small time agency, because I couldn't really get I couldn't really get anything else. So I started my journey with an agency, in event company, basically as a business development executive. And then in 2006, one of my clients, UB Group, they picked me up, and I joined them for sales. So that's how my formal corporate journey started in 2006. Having said that, the whole journey of working and studying together from 2005 to 2006, and then from 2006 to start journey in an alcohol industry wasn't really easy, because one, I think a lot of people who were already working in that organization were not prepared for a woman to join, and there was a natural resistance. They did not want any leader to tell them what they were doing, and they did not accept me. So I had a huge amount of resistance coming from my own team. And also this whole industry had this I think it is a made up notion that it was a male dominated industry, and every female who worked in the alcohol industry was looked with suspicion. So with that, battling day in and day out, I worked with them for about 2.5 years, and then moved to Pernod Ricard, which is again in alcohol. I joined them for trade marketing, and I continued for a very short stint then, because there was a role conflict and I really wanted to move out. And at that time I had something called William Grant and Sons. They basically one of the biggest distilleries in the world, and they have iconic brands like Glenfiddich, Grant, Balvenie, Hendrix in their portfolio, and they had started the country operation. And they basically interviewed me for an assistant brand manager position, and I joined them for an assistant brand manager for Glenfiddich. And I stayed with them for about 5 years, and it was an absolute lovely journey. I think I would contribute a lot of my personal growth to that stint of mine. I think because of the way I started my career and the way I had a lot of hunger to grow, anything which made me complacent and anything which basically looked stable to me, I really wanted to challenge it, and that became my personality type. In 2013, I had a daughter, and I was having an itch to do something during my maternity break, and I really wanted to do something, and I did not know what. So one of the reasons why, because I had spent almost nine and a half years in the alcohol industry, I had this itch to do something more. to actually go out of this industry and figure out what it takes for a marketer to do, because I had moved from trade marketing, from a sales to trade marketing, from trade marketing to core brand role. And at that time I really thought I would want to change the industry, and I left a very comfortable position in Delhi, which was a very comfortable position staying wise, family wise, and left everything to go to Bombay, and I started my real estate career with Lodha Group, which is one of the greatest organizations I would have ever seen in real estate space. And I started with them, and then from there to kind of an offshoot from there, Xanadu Group, and now with DLF, and now I'm with Emaar India. So it's been a real estate journey since then. One thing I would definitely say, that these industries, whether it is alcoholic beverages, whether it is real estate, it is presumed that these are male-dominated industries, and you'd hardly see females there. And somewhat to an extent I would agree, because you really, if you look around, and you'll find not many leaders, not many women around you in these industries so far. Things are changing. Companies, big giants are now hiring women as well. But these industries brought a completely new challenge every single day, and gave me an opportunity to rework on a business challenge every single day. I've worked on P&Ls behind the brands, I've worked on commercial spaces, I've worked for the transformations of the businesses across these brands also. So it's been a fantastic 15 years of my life, I must say. Real estate, and as it is as an industry, was undergoing a lot of transformation since almost a year and a half, because of various regulatory reforms which have come, like RERA, tax reforms like GST. So a lot of consolidation has been happening in this industry since almost like a year and a half. Now with COVID, a lot of pressure on sustaining the business are eventually going to exit the business. So eventually what you will find is, out of maybe 100,000 of real estate developers, you will find less number of real estate developers, the ones where the recognition is there, the one where the services are committed, where obviously the customers are committed that their monies are not going to go anywhere. So a lot of consolidation is happening, and that will continue. Every company has found its virtual way of servicing the customer. We are no different. We have also figured out ways and means through which a customer can basically experience the whole journey of buying a home online. So it's almost from a physical space, it has moved to kind of a digital world, exchange of information. Also from a back-end technology point of view, also we've done we've started a lot of initiatives, right from data analytics to data consolidation and mining efforts, where we are able to understand who is the customer. So all of this, I think, as an industry, people have now understood the importance of technology and the technology-backed operations, and which is what is happening in this industry. So today, if you find established real estate players, I'm sure their marketing teams are no longer restricted on providing collaterals or increasing brand visibility. They are more or less the custodians of P&L, where their profitability is equally on the shoulders of marketeers to be able to figure out the channels and means to go to the customer and fetch business. One change, a big change which I have seen conscious spending and analytical spending. It's not that you just experiment spending money, and then see the results and then change the gear. Now people are gaining intelligence to even understand the kind of data they have and the analysis they can do for the kind of product or offering they have, and versus what is it that they're doing on the digital space. So in the past, if I can just say 5 years, in the past 5 years I have seen experimental digital marketing going into now an analytical digital marketing side, where every effort or every spend is backed up by data and is backed up by findings and is backed up by a lot of research, both at the customer and product level. So a lot of intelligence is going into designing a marketing strategy per se. Earlier, you gave us a problem statement to a marketer, and the marketer used to say, okay, I will find various vehicles to put our product on, and we will see how they are behaving. Right now, I think the strategy has become that you tell the problem statement to a marketer, and the marketer says that I will look at the historical data of how the product has been behaving in the market, what has been the offtake, who has been buying it, what is the psychographic demographic study of my customer base, and where is my business more likely to come in the future. So right, looking at the historical data to also making a future forecast, and then making a media plan, marketing plan, making a strategy, go to market, all of that is now backed up with a lot of statistics, which is not something which we saw earlier. Earlier, marketeers were essentially seen as cost functions. They were given X amount of budget. They were asked to go to the market and do visibility exercises. I don't think so that's there anymore. For a transformation to happen, you need to basically have a bus going in the right direction. You need to have the right people on the bus. You need to have the wrong people off the bus. And once you have the wrong people off the bus and right people on the bus, then you need to steer the bus in the right direction with patience, perseverance, and of course fuel. So if you look at this very small, simple layman's example, then what it says is that have an equally robust 360 degrees program where development, implementation, learning, putting into use, they all come in systematic order, and is also helped by resources and people equally. There are various instances where a woman is made to feel that, whether it is a maternity break, for example, a woman taking a maternity break and coming back, to also the stage of pregnancy, as sensitive as that, to maybe taking a sabbatical for something as tedious at home. These are situations which, we can't generalize it, but then I feel that that is where people start drawing parallels and start drawing differences. People feel that, okay, if a woman, I won't, of course, take the names, but there have been instances in the interviews where the judgments are passed, whether somebody is of marriage age is being interviewed, then you kind of judge that, okay, whether that person will get married soon, or how will that impact us. If a woman is recently married and she's giving an interview, these are subconscious questions which sometimes in a very spoken and sometimes unspoken way come in the foreplay, that they basically are asked, okay, what is it that, how do you compare the productivity of a woman versus a man? And it's a very whilst a lot of people will not accept it, because today there is too much of there is a whole movement of how women are equal to men, and there is this whole war cry of equality which is happening. So a lot of people will not accept it, but the fact is that the personal lives of women is different than the life of a man. The natural there are some women who have these natural incidences of whether marriage, whether childbirth, or a sabbatical for home, and these are times when a woman is just doing a role of what she is expected to do. So then there are organizations who give you enough space, time, comfort to make sure that you equally play your roles well. And then there are organizations who ask you or who replace you during the time of your sabbatical, or who basically put somebody else on the role whilst you were away on your maternity break. And that's something which is very unusual, but very unacceptable also. So I feel that, I thankfully have not worked in any organization who was so brutal, but I have had cases in front of me, my colleagues, my friends, they've all shared with me multiple instances where these landmarks or these milestones of their lives have been questioned, challenged, and put into a spot. So if I talk about myself in particular, I personally feel that I never got this kind of a challenge where I've had any issues with my personal life. affecting my professional life in any way. Having said that, I still feel that there is something which is definitely it's not related to personal life, but for example, after I left Lodha and I joined Xanadu, after almost a year, I had to come back to Gurgaon and I was working in Bombay. So when I was coming to Gurgaon, a lot of people asked me, you've got 1 year experience in an organization. Well, that was an organization, an offshoot from my previous organization, so it wasn't technically a switchover. It was almost like transition into the other arm, if I can put it correctly. However, a lot of people said just 1 year showing in your resume, and I don't understand this. I mean, how can one judge whether after 4 months of my career, or 6 months of my career, or 18 months of my career, I have a situation which calls me to take a change? And it's not necessarily a fidgety mind also. So in today's time, when I interview candidates, one of the things which I definitely ignore, if somebody says, okay, this person has changed 3 jobs in 4 years, well, nobody wants to change jobs. Nobody wants to really move jobs and leave a company, go to another company, get into the problem of finding another company, and leaving aside exceptions maybe, but nobody wants to deliberately do it. So I give proper respect and due to these frequent changes, considering that there could be something absolutely personal with this person, and for this reason that person's productivity can't be questioned. And I think that is a norm which this industry should follow. There are some taboos which are definitely to go out. You need to judge the people on the capacity they bring on the table, not on what they are showing on a paper, because a paper can definitely not judge a person. See, typically a real estate purchase is defined by 3 factors: the location, the developer, and the price. These are the 3 typical questions. If you have the answers clear in your mind and you're convinced about these 3 questions, then the sale is done. So, in terms of equipping a customer to be able to get these answers clearly sitting in his own home and not really coming out of this house, there are certain interventions which are done, which are backed up by technology, obviously. We are trying to give as close a look of the location and the surroundings to the customer so that he can understand what the location is and what is the habitation around and what is the location advantages and disadvantages. And then the second is obviously the developer. So we of course also educate who we are, and what we do, and what are our commitments for the customers. And the third is price and the product, for which we create, earlier also, specifically in an under construction property, a person had to read all the collaterals, all the marketing materials for that product. Ditto is the case. The only format has changed is physical paper collateral versus online collateral, and that essentially being, as I said, the industry is getting regularized. So whatever you commit to a customer is absolutely cast in stone. You cannot. There is no variance. There is no variance which is allowed. So obviously there is that confidence that the person, when he reads about the product, is able to take a fair decision. So these 3 elements are essentially given in the online space for a customer who's sitting at home. So obviously, but as I said, couple of industries, there needs to be some amount of physical touch and feel, and I think the customers still want to come to the sites for the ready to move in category. So if you're saying that the house is ready to move in, it just gives no reason for the customer not to come and see the house. So in those cases, you have a lot of dependency on the actual site visits. But in the under construction portfolio, so people are able to take the decisions online, are able to transact online as well. So that is happening across the industry so far. There are 2 questions. One, what is it that you buying for the real estate for? So earlier, if you go almost a decade back and see the buying behavior of the customers, a lot of people used to buy real estate for investment purposes, and they used to just feel that okay, they will buy today, sell tomorrow, and this cycle will continue. That used to be an investor category. The second category was that they used to buy a plot or a flat for their extended family or for their own family, and they basically bought the real estate for their personal use, whether today or 10 years hence, but the idea was that they're buying it for themselves. That is a category which is an end user category. Now, what has happened is that there was a huge amount of investor and end user ratio as close to maybe 60-40 at some point. But today the end users have taken over the game, and you don't really find hard absolute pure play investing business. People are buying, say, a plotted development for, if they feel that their family is going to extend in the future, they'll be able to make a home. So now this category of people, when they want to buy and invest their money, where do they go? They can't buy gold right now. Everybody knows what gold is going through. They can't. I mean, whilst a lot of people say that when the market crashes, buy shares, but then there is a fair amount of people who don't really want to put their money in a market which is very volatile. So real estate in those scenarios works very well, specifically because that even if not for capital appreciation, which is a question a lot of people keep asking, at least it's an asset for protecting the future. You bought something, you have something which, even if it doesn't rise in terms of prices exponentially over the years, it's an asset you own. And that is why real estate as an asset class is gaining far more momentum than any other category. The only thing is that yes, it's a cautious spending. The customers are trying to, earlier if the customer was looking at 5 properties and transacting in one, now the customer is looking in 15 properties and transacting in one. So it has gone more in a more cautious spending way, but it hasn't really challenged the industry so far at all. Very small message to everybody who's working very hard, and I'm sure all of us are built in this way that we work very hard, is that keep your focus intact. There is no way you will be challenged or your potential will be challenged if you're committed. So one single thing which I keep telling my teams, and I keep telling everybody I meet, that there is one thing which you need to have, and that is ownership. Anything which you undertake, anything which you start, take it with full ownership, the way it is your own, and don't leave any stone unturned. Don't feel, in the corporate life there will be many incidences where you will be having an opportunity to say to your own self that this is not my problem, let somebody else do it. And that's where it makes a biggest I mean, it is one of the biggest differences you could make, if I can put it correctly. If you take the ownership, and if somebody who's working with you realizes that they don't have to remind you, or you don't need follow-ups, you are on top of your game, and if something is told to you, it is done. If that is the kind of commitment you portray and the kind of ownership you portray, there is no reason why the ladder will not take you to the top.